Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We will be continuing our lessons in Mystical Awakenings, and today we will be talking about personality drives.
All right, this is a big topic. It's part of the soul's path, like we talked about in the last class, and it is the second face of the soul. And there are 9 different personality drives, and everyone chooses one before they are born. You do not inherit your personality drive from a parent or a relative. You choose it all on your own. And everyone chooses their personality drive for a specific reason, but that reason probably is only going to be known by your soul. So the personality drive is a survival strategy. We live in a very chaotic world that a lot of people can experience as dangerous or difficult. And so everybody chooses a personality drive, one of these 9 drives. And the information that I am going to be giving you now comes from a system called the Enneagram. I'm going to show you a picture. And the word Enneagram means 9-pointed star. And you can see on each of these points, there is going to be a number. So what we're going to be doing is going around the Enneagram and talking about each one of those numbers. And also, before we get started, you'll notice that this number here, which is number 7, over here is number 8, and over here is number 6. So when you have a personality drive, say your drive is 7, you will also have many of the characteristics of the ones on either side of it. It's important to understand that as a survival strategy, your personality drive does not work very well. There is only one survival strategy that works, and that is the path of love and being loving. And the reason why that path works is it's puts you into a high vibration, and it becomes what you think about all the time. When I began doing my work on reality creation and conscious evolution, reading the Course in Miracles and taking my workshops with Lazarus, it's all I thought about day and night, day and night, day and night. When I learned about personality drive, I thought about that constantly. What's my personality drive? How am I disintegrating? I learned about shadow. It's like, what's my shadow? What are the things I need to be looking out for? But it's basically all in that category of I want to be the best me I know how to be. I want to be fully loving. I want to reach my highest potential. I want to be pure of spirit. I want to be pure in the eyes of God. Whatever you want to call that, that's a high vibration. It means you're not concerned so much about what your peers are thinking or what's in the media or what your culture is telling you to do and be. It's higher. So your vibration keeps you safe. When you have a high vibration, you attract life experience that is on your spiritual journey that is helping to lift you up into an even higher vibration. That doesn't mean you don't have learning experiences. You do, because it takes a really long time to fully evolve. But the goal is to lift yourself up into that higher vibration so you can be safe. It's not an easy journey, but it is a powerful one. So with the Enneagram, you will also see on this little piece of paper that there are arrows. And in one direction, like down at the bottom here, I think the red, this says, the arrows in red say stress, and the arrows in black say relaxed. And when you're under stress, you tend to fall into the negative polarity of your personality drive. So everything about the soul has polarity, like we talked about last time, because the soul has all the full range of emotions from light to dark. And when you're in victim consciousness, your emotions are primarily what we would call dark. They are depression, unhappiness, sadness, anxiety, fear, anger, because you have all these life experiences that make you feel like a victim. And that's the emotional aspect of that. When you move into higher consciousness, you're dealing with higher emotions like love, peace, joy, hope, optimism, these kinds of things. Um, so the next thing I want to say about the personality drive is that they're 100% unconscious to us. We don't know we're born with a personality drive. We don't know we've got one of 9 and that there are 8 other ways of looking at the world. So that's the challenge here. And that's why it's hard for people to get along, because if you're looking at the world through your lens of personality drive, which is different than your lens of personality drive, and this lens says, this is the way you survive, this is the way you create safety and security. And the other one says, no, that's absolutely wrong. This is the way to do it. Then we create conflict. And as a psychotherapist, when couples would come to me and we would be having conflict, the first thing I would want to do is find out what's your personality drive and what's your personality drive and what does it mean to have those personality drives, so that you can begin to look at your personality drive from a higher level. You
Mhm.
can't look at anything from a higher level when it's fused with you.
Mhm.
When you don't know you've got it, you don't even have any words to talk about it or any way to see it. It's like it's invisible. It's in
Mhm.
the unconscious. And so that's why it's so important to know what your personality drive is. So when you're young and immature, you're generally making decisions based on what's called the disintegration of your personality drive. And um, the disintegration is the victim consciousness lens. And when you're more mature and you're seeing a bigger picture, right? It's all about seeing a bigger picture, standing up here, looking down. Oh, I get it. I can see all these things now I couldn't see when I was younger. You are in what's called the integrated aspect of your personality drive, or the healthy aspect, or the positive polarity. That's another way of saying it. And so once you figure out your personality drive, you can begin to determine, am I disintegrating? You can, by becoming mindful, you go, oh, I'm just doing that fear thing again.
Mhm.
This is the disintegration of my particular personality drives. All personality drives don't have fear, but you can begin to see it, and then you can take a step back and look at your reasoning, look at your thinking. Am I thinking through victim consciousness now, or am I thinking through higher consciousness? And when you shift into the positive polarity, you'll be thinking through higher consciousness. The personality drive was never meant to stand alone. So this whole thing, these 9 ways of viewing the world, make a pie, right? It's like a pie cut into 9 pieces.
Mhm.
Every piece is valuable.
Mhm.
So if say you were a peacemaker and you wanted to end a conflict, you'd want everyone coming in with their perspective. You wouldn't want to be invalidating any of those perspectives. You'd want to be questioning each person. Well, what is this based on? What are you seeing? And usually you're seeing something based upon your personality drive that the other people in the room can't see, because they're seeing things based on their personality drive.
Mhm.
So once you know that there is such a thing as a personality drive, as an Enneagram, then you can come together and you can say, well, from the have fun personality drive's point of view, this is what I see. Or from the boss's personality drive, this is what I see. And
Mhm.
then you can come together and make a decision that's whole,
Mhm.
instead of fragmented by 9 different parts. The other thing I want to say is that we all have every personality drive inside of us. We
Mhm.
don't just have one, we all have pieces of all of them, because each personality drive is an important component of the whole.
Mhm.
Like there's a personality drive called have fun. Well, who doesn't want to have fun?
Mhm.
Everybody.
Yeah.
There's another one called safety and security. Who doesn't want to be safe and secure? Everybody.
Mhm.
Who doesn't? There's one called the helper. Who doesn't want to help others?
Mm.
Right? Everybody. So we all have pieces of these personality drives inside of us. But how you find your own personality drive, it's like the lens through which you look at the world, and it's also the way that you disintegrate. So each of the personality drive disintegrates in their own specific way. So when you look for your personality drive, you want to look at yourself during a time when you were the most disintegrated. And for most people, that is late teens and during the 20s
Mm.
is going to be your most disintegrated time because you're still pretty darn unconscious during that time, and just basically going along on cultural beliefs and what you're hearing from the media and things like that. You haven't done enough, you haven't had enough life experience to become wise, and it may not be till you're 50 before you can actually
Mm.
you know become wise enough to discern all these different things that you're supposed to discern. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through each of the personality drives and talk about um, the main concept or idea related to survival, and talk about the disintegrated part. And so when you're thinking about what's my personality drive, you need to go back to that time in your life. If you're 50 years old, I'm hoping that you've learned a thing or two,
Mm.
right? About relationships and how to be more loving and so forth and so on. So you're going back to that time when you weren't making the right decisions, when you're making a lot of mistakes and doing a lot of foolish things. That's how you figure it out, because the older you get, the more you become more universal, like taking different things into account
Mm.
that you didn't take into account when you were younger. So, so that might be difficult for people. People
Mm.
have egos. They don't want to think, I have never did anything wrong. Well, once you're old enough, you realize, oh my God,
Yeah.
I used to do those things.
Mhm. Yeah.
Even you remember that.
Mhm.
And you're only 19,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you still have memories of.
Yes, a lot of reflecting. And I also want to add to, I will link a test to see what personality type you are, in the description.
Yes, and there are many websites where you can take tests, and most of this information, well, I learned it from my teacher Lazarus, the channel being, and he talked about it in a very specific way. So I use a lot of his language, but I've also read books on the Enneagram. There's probably 100 different books that have been written on the Enneagram. It's a very ancient system. This is based on sacred geometry. This is a sacred geometric shape. So there's a mathematical equation that goes with it that some people have written about in their books, and most of that goes way over my head. Um, but it is an ancient system. And according to my teacher Lazarus, if you were growing up in Atlantis today, you would know what your personality drive was.
Mm.
So it didn't even originate in on Earth. It originated in other galaxies.
Mhm.
So that's I suspect that's why Lazarus uses it. And
Mhm.
so I'm going to go through the personality drives 1 through 9, and hopefully you can think about what's your personality drive. Think about also the personality drive of your significant other, your partner, perhaps your children. If you're a child dealing with a parent, you're thinking about parents, especially parents you may have had difficulty with, partners you've had difficulty with, because that's where the personality drive comes up. And even friends, it's really fun to try to figure out what you are and what everybody else is, because all of a sudden the strange behavior of others begins to make sense. So the first personality drive, number 1, is called a reformer. And I also need to say that It's the numbers that are important when it comes to personality drives. So you can read one book that calls the number one personality drive reformer. You can read another one that calls it the perfectionist.
Mm.
And it's the same with all the personality drives. They have different names. The names, sometimes the author just gives the name, but it's the numbers that are always consistent.
Mm.
So one, I'm going to call them the performer or the perfectionist, or the reformer or the perfectionist. And what they do is they look around them and they see that, wow, we live in a dangerous world that's very, very chaotic.
Mm.
And how am I going to stay safe in this world?
Mm.
And they come up with an idea that I can stay safe if I follow all the rules and perfect myself so that I don't become part of the problem.
Mm.
And their goal in life is to not only perfect themselves, but to perfect others as well. And a good archetype for the reformer is all superheroes,
Mm.
right? They're always fighting against the bad guy. They're the do-gooders of the world. We call on them, to help us out when the bad guys come around, and they're just the one that are doing the right thing all the time. And that's the way you can kind of think of them. They're always trying to do the right thing according to their maturity level, which can be very different depending on whether you're immature or mature,
Mm.
and according to their cultural perspective and their religious perspective and their point of view and all of these kinds of things. So, it's we live in a very complex world where a lot of things come together.
Mhm.
So, the reformer, the survival strategy of the reformer is to do everything right and never make any mistakes so no one can ever fault you.
Mm.
And they're the ones that are very rule bound.
Mhm.
They like to live that they create a rule book. It could be the rule book of your religion, um, or your culture, or it could be something that you've created on your own. But the rules are all important, and it could be the rules of good housekeeping, where you are always tidying up. And I can guarantee you, if you're really messy, you don't care about what your house looks like, there's always dishes scattered all over your sink and your counter, I can guarantee you, you are not a reformer.
Mm.
Reformers tend to want to be clean. They want everything to be in order. Um, and they're looking at things that are out of order. So their focus of attention, so the personality drive is the focus of attention. So you got these glasses on called reformer, and you walk into a room and you look around and go, that's out of place, that's out of place. That picture is a little bit askew,
Mm.
right? That's what you're paying attention to.
Mhm.
Because that's what the personality drive does. It causes you to pay attention to certain information in your environment.
Mm.
And the reformers tend to be kind of uptight. They tend to be, like I said before, very rule bound. They tend to be very critical and be very condemning, but any of the personality drives can be that. It's not just the reformer. Um, and they are critical and condemning of people who have bad behavior or behavior that doesn't align with their particular rule book.
Mm.
And so, what kind of jobs do you think they would gravitate to? Think about who breaks the rules and what kind of job
Robots.
policemen, judges, right? Preachers, not in, and there can be a lot of different personality drives, but yeah, you're going to hell if you don't give up that sin, right?
Okay, yeah.
They're following this rule book. um, judges, I'm going to throw you into jail and throw the key away,
Mm.
type people. The policemen, hey, did you know that you were 5 miles over
Mhm.
the speed limit? It's like, oh my God, that's so terrible, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
And they tend to think in terms of black and right and light, black and white. These are the rules, and you're breaking them, and you need to be punished. So people who are reformers tend to punish um, people that they think are breaking the rules.
Mm.
And as you probably know, we have a really terrible prison system. It's a system that is based on profit. And it's about my experience as a psychotherapist is that when you get pulled into that system, it's really hard to get out of it
Mhm.
because there are people out there looking for reasons to
Yeah.
pull you back into that system. So, in our reform system, isn't about like, well, let's deal with your childhood traumas.
Mm.
Let's deal with your child abuse issues.
Yeah.
Let's deal with what the things that were done to you in the past. Let's deal with your poverty level that
Mhm.
has made you into a criminal automatically. Let's deal, it's not about helping people grow up and evolve and understand themselves and forgive those people that have harmed them in the past, you know, our reform system isn't about that, right? It's
Yeah.
about let's throw these people into jail, let's throw away the key, let's punish them
Mhm.
through deprivation,
Mhm.
basically. It's not about teaching them skills or how to become, make a decent living when they get out. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that is like the epitome of the black and white, the immature reformer going in that direction. Let's put him in jail, throw away the key. And if it was a parent, not a judge, but a parent, that was a reformer parent, what
Mhm.
would that kind of person look like? And I think of, did you ever watch the movie The Sound of Music?
Yes.
You remember the father of the children?
I watched it so long ago. I don't remember, but I have watched it.
Well, he was a military man and
Mhm.
he wanted to raise his children with self discipline.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
he wanted to be in control and write all the rules. And when he would call them, he'd blow a whistle and they'd all have to line up like in a military type thing. Well, that's kind of symbolic of that kind of parenting style where you're going to follow the rules. If you're not following the rules, you're going to be punished and this, that, and the other.
Mm.
Um, so that would be the negative polarity or the most disintegrated or the most immature aspect of this personality drive. In victim consciousness, the world is a terrible place and we have to punish these rule breakers. And if the reformer themselves have negative impulses, they have to repress those negative impulses so they can become really uptight about themselves and they don't look at the complexity of life, that we have all these stresses going on all the time and um, so much that we have to deal with in life and so many finances. I mean, I could go on and on because I've dealt with them all, right?
Yeah.
And they don't tend to cut themselves any slack and they don't tend to cut other people any slack. So that's the less mature polarity. Now, in the positive polarity, well, reformers are needed in the world, right? There needs to be people in the world to point out the things that are wrong,
Mhm.
and they need to have the courage to step up to the plate and talk about that.
Mhm.
Um, so let's see, I have a list of reformers that are famous. So people like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Jesus Christ, right? Pointing out these are the things that are wrong. Jesus Christ, I know that they hurt you, but maybe it's time to turn the other cheek.
Mhm.
Maybe we don't want an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. What good does that do anybody?
Mhm.
Right? We need to learn how to forgive. We need to be compassionate towards people. That's a positive.
Mm.
Very positive aspect of the reformer. Looking at things through a higher perspective, um, looking at the world through compassionate eyes, looking at ourselves through compassionate eyes. Because as we started talking about this, the things, the mistakes we made when we were younger and didn't know any better,
Mhm.
well,
Yeah.
you need to forgive yourself for that because you didn't know any better,
Yeah.
right? If you condemn yourself for that forever, how are you going to evolve and grow? Because you're going to stay in shame and guilt forever. So you have to forgive yourself, forgive those who trespass against you, and so forth and so on.
Mm.
Other well-known reformers are Mary Poppins.
Mm.
Spit spot. Gotta clean up this room.
Mhm.
You gotta tidy up. Um, uh, Mr. Spock from Star Trek.
Mhm.
He's always doing the right thing. Nelson Mandela is another great example of a reformer that is looking at the problems there are in the world, the things that need to be changed, and saying, okay, um, how do we change this in a way that the change is actually going to work, that the change is actually going to be long lasting without condemning and punishing people? How do we create these positive changes in the world and in people? Say you've got a teenager that's kind of going off the rails. How do I help this child reform without condemning them, without punishing them, but helping them grow up to become more mature and wiser? Well,
Mhm.
that takes a lot more thinking, right? Takes
Yeah.
a lot more brain work and effort to think these things through. And um, what can I do? What are the appropriate words I can say? What can I do to help them to mature? And what can I do to help myself mature?
Mhm.
Because sometimes we're the target that needs to grow up.
Mhm.
So that's the first personality drive. And the second one is called the helper. And the helper survival strategy is that they look out into the world and they see that the people who are loved, they are the ones who stay safe.
Mm.
Because when you're loved by someone, you create an alliance with them and they protect you.
Mm.
They 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 keep you from having to deal with the harsher realities. Life is always nicer when there's two of you facing the world together, because the world is such a complicated place to live.
Mhm.
But the helper uses this as a survival strategy. And what they do is they look around and they look for someone who's needy and figure out, what can I do to be of service to that people and therefore get them to love me.
Mm.
So that becomes a manipulation rather than an act of love.
Mhm.
Now, of all the nine personality drives, the helper is the most giving because that's part of them. And it doesn't matter if they're in the, the unhealthy polarity or the healthy polarity. That's the thrust
Mm.
of their personality in this lifetime. The problem comes when you're giving to get,
Mhm.
as opposed to when you're giving unconditionally
Mhm.
as an act of love with no expectation of return.
Yeah.
And when you're giving as an act of love with no expectation of return, you're not just giving indiscriminately to anybody. Unless someone is going to use that gift to positively uplift themselves, you're not going to give them money if they're just going to go buy drugs or
Mhm. Yeah.
do something foolish.
Yeah. Some people don't deserve that give.
Well, it's not so much that they don't deserve it, they are not able to use it wisely to uplift themselves. So it's not indiscriminate giving,
Mhm.
it's picking and choosing. You know what? If I give this to this person, they can really use it to improve their lives.
Mhm.
rather than, just looking at all the homeless people on the streets and all the people needing a handout. It's like, who do I give to?
Yeah.
It's like it's can be very difficult to determine.
Mhm.
Um, and so the helper in the negative polarity often sees life as a system of transactions, like you
Mhm.
scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And it's the classic metaphor would be the woman who gives the man sex so that he will support her.
Mm.
There's no love in the relationship in particular, but that's the transaction. As long as you support me, I'll keep doing this thing for you.
Mm.
Um, and, that can reflect in many, many different ways. That's just an example. So here's the problem. So if you're a helper personality drive, and if you're giving to get, what you're doing is you're looking around the world. You got those glasses on. I'm a helper, and you're looking for people who are needy.
Mhm.
Because why? Because, well, I could help them,
Mhm.
and then once I help them, they'll love me, and then they'll take care of me.
Mm.
But who are the least likely people in the world to be able to help you in return? Someone who's needy,
Mhm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, what the helper is looking for is appreciation,
Mhm.
um, compliments, love in that particular form.
Mhm.
They may be looking for a partner, they may not be, but um, when you're constantly looking for needy people, you may not be finding the kind of people who can return the favor.
Mhm. Yeah. And even expecting it back is a form of manipulation. You
Yes,
can't think that, "Oh, if I give you this, they have to give me that." They not always. And especially the people that like you said, the people that need the help and the people that are needy, they're usually not in a place where they can even help you at all or give you anything.
right.
Mm.
Exactly. So do you know of anyone who's a helper personality direct?
Um, I'm sure I've met a friend, I'm trying to think, that was, I don't know exactly, it's just based off of what I see, but, yeah, and they end up being very manipulative.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yes, they're often really nice people. They're like often overly nice people. They're
Yeah.
often helping you when you haven't asked for help,
Mhm. Yeah.
and or giving you gifts when
Mm.
it's like, why are you giving me this gift?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, here's another thing that happens with the helper is that when they disintegrate, so each of the personality drives disintegrates into another personality drive. So remember when I was talking to you about the arrows? So
Mhm.
you got the, see, there's all these arrows here.
Uh-huh.
One arrow is black, the other arrow is red. So when you're going in the direction of the red arrow, you are moving into the disintegrated aspect of that other personality. So the two disintegrates into the eight, which
Mhm.
is called the boss.
Mhm.
And the boss in the dark side can become very, very controlling. So what the two does is when they disintegrate because they're not getting appreciated, they're not receiving the love they expected to receive when they got into this relationship. They can become very dark, very controlling, telling you what to do, kind of mean spirited. And they're basically telling that needy person they've gotten into a relationship with, this is how you need to straighten up and fly right.
Mm. Yeah.
And it does, the relationship doesn't end up being loving,
Mhm.
it's the kind of relationship that unravels.
Yes.
So helpers also go into certain professions. So what kind of professions would helpers go into?
I would think caretakers, either
Yes,
babysitters, caretakers, working with elderly, or
yes,
social workers.
yes. Social workers, they especially go into nursing
Mhm.
and those kinds of fields.
Mhm.
And, when they have made it into their career, then they are receiving income from doing that. So they're not needing it to be that kind of a partnership relationship. But a lot of people are grateful. A
Mhm.
lot of people do give them compliments and so forth and so on. So they feel good in those careers.
Mhm.
And yeah, they could go into a wide range of careers, but those are the careers that they gravitate towards.
Mhm.
The next personality drive is called the achiever.
Mhm.
And another name for them is the thinker or the performer. And the achiever looks around themselves out in the world and they say to themselves, you know what? It's the people who achieve great things, the people who achieve things that others admire, that get the respect and are admired by others.
Mhm.
That's my strategy for staying safe and secure.
Mhm.
And so when you are this personality drive, you will work tirelessly to create having or achieving the things that you want to achieve. But for the most part, you will do it to the detriment of loving relationships.
Mhm.
So, for example, say you wanted to achieve going to the being going to the Olympics as a gymnast.
Mhm.
So, what do you have to 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 be chosen to do that? Well,
Train a lot.
hours
Yeah.
and hours and hours a day,
Yeah.
right? What do you have to do to have a really successful business where you're making a lot of money?
Put a lot of hours and a lot of money and time and
You're
yeah.
putting all your time and all your energy and all your effort is going into achieving this thing. So that's where your focus is. What do I need to do to achieve this thing that I want to achieve so that other people will admire me?
Mhm.
So achievers go are also attracted to certain professions. They're attracted to the professions that other people admire.
Mhm.
So what might that be?
Like you said, like maybe small business owners, or I could see them, um, no, I was gonna say a CEO, but that's more of the boss, I would think.
Well, they could also be an achiever. I mean, that there's a lot of crossover in all these,
Yeah.
but
Or celebrities,
celebrities, actors, actresses,
artists.
sports, artists, exactly. All these kinds of things where people look at you and go, wow, you're just so amazing because you achieved X, Y, and Z. So here's the thing. So the dark side of this, so there's a dark side and a light side. So the dark side of this is like, well, I want to achieve making a lot of money because everybody admires people who are rich
Mhm.
because we're all wanting to be rich.
Yeah.
And so what do I have to do to be rich? Well, maybe I can step on people as I climb the corporate ladder. Maybe I want to sell a product and well, if I have to do false advertising to get people to do this, to buy this product, well, that's just the way it is.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's like, I want to be an elected political official, right? Well, if I just lie to people and tell them what they want to hear, even though I have no intention of doing it. Well,
Mhm.
that's not a problem, is it?
Yeah.
So that's the dark side of the achiever personality. And you can see how, you know, this is how we get ahead in victim consciousness, right? It's we want to make money. We want to, and if we have to do false advertising, that's the way it is. And, all these things that we justify as a result of the goal that we desire.
Mhm.
And so the classic thing that happens to the achiever is that a lot of times they'll get into a relationship with a helper because, their whole goal focus is on their goal. Well,
Mhm.
I better get together with a helper because they're going to help me on the home front and cook all my meals and keep my
Mhm.
life orderly and have my children and all that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
right? Because helpers, they like being stay at home, housewives and mothers and so forth and so on. A lot of the personality drives do. I'm not just picking on them, but it's like then they'll come home one day. So the achiever will come home one day and the wife's packed up all her bags and she's left him a note and said, "Well, you don't care about me. Why should I be in this relationship? I'm lonely."
Yeah.
It's like you never do anything with the family. You've always got meetings to go to. You don't even know what your son or daughter's interested in.
Mhm.
That's kind of the classic archetype of the disintegrated achiever.
Mhm.
Um, and to get into the positive polarity, the achiever has to realize that the most important thing in my life is love and being loving, and how to maintain this loving relationship and how to help my partner feel loved by me
Mhm.
and my children feel loved by me. That's got to be my most important goal.
Yeah.
It's not that they give up this other goal, but they suddenly have to realize that, what? All the money in the world is not going to buy me happiness.
Yeah.
All
And
the
that in
success.
itself is an achievement. I mean, I would think that,
Exactly.
having a loving family or whatever, to a lot of people, that is in itself a big achievement.
Yes. Just like to the helper, it's a big achievement to figure out that I need to learn to give unconditionally because anything else is a manipulation.
Mhm.
And to the reformer is, yes, the world needs to be reformed, but I'd better figure out what real reform is, and it's not just condemnation and punishment.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? You see how they go, all of these things require literally a perceptual shift into
Mhm.
higher consciousness.
Yeah.
And that's why, just because you say, "Oh, I'm an achiever," that doesn't mean anything to me until I know what your maturity level is, how spiritually conscious you are. Okay.
Yeah.
So on the light side, achievers are the people who want to help everybody achieve. So achievers put all this time and energy into learning their talent or creating their business or whatever it is that they do. And
Mhm.
once they've got the achievement, they're the ones that are saying to themselves, you know what, I need to give this information away to other people. I want to take a protege. I want to teach them how to achieve. I don't want them making the same mistakes that I made. I want to teach them
Mhm.
how to become successful by changing their thinking, by changing certain habits and so forth and so on. So there's all these kind of books like Think and Grow Rich and those kind of books.
Yeah.
These are written by achievers
Mhm.
who are giving their gift to other people who are also achievers,
Yeah.
wanting to improve themselves. Do you know anyone who's an achiever?
I don't think so. I'm sure I've probably met some, I just none that's standing out to me.
Mm-hmm. Let me see of people in who are famous achievers are Oprah Winfrey,
Mhm.
Tiger Woods. He's that guy in golf, right?
Golf, yeah.
Yeah. Lance Armstrong, the astronaut. Elvis Presley.
Mm.
Bill Wilson, who was the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Mm.
Um, People who have achieved.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very successful people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the next personality drive is called the romantic. And they're also called the artist. Lazarus calls them the one that wants to be special.
Mm.
So what this personality drive does is they look out at the world, at all the chaos. How am I going to be loved in this world? And they say to themselves, I know how I'll be loved. I will create something magnificent. I will create something beautiful. It will be a work of art or music of some kind, a song, a dance performance, anything to do with creativity.
Mhm.
And they um, they think that in order to stand out from the crowd, they need to be special.
Mm.
And so they develop their specialness and their uniqueness, their unique talent, their unique way of looking at the world. And there are people, famous people who stand out as being this personality drive, like Picasso. Like, I'm going to bring in this whole new art form. Before it was people are drawing pictures that look like pictures, and
Mhm.
he's drawing all these, like
Abstract
cubicle,
shape.
abstract
Yeah.
cubicle looking things, right? So they're always on the forefront of change,
Mm.
creating from one form to the next form. And a lot of them use their body as a canvas.
Mhm.
And so for those people, they want to look exceptional.
Mhm.
And then later on, it's piercings came in,
Mhm.
and there first, there's always these two little here, and then it's like, no, that's not enough. That doesn't stand out. Now we got to have them here and here and here and here and here and here
They have
and
big
here and
ones.
here and
Mhm.
big, huge ones and the nipples. It's like, let's do that, and
Yeah.
other places that are not mentionable, right? And then it's like all of a sudden, and things sticking out of your cheeks, right?
Mhm.
That people who brought in that fashion
Mhm.
are this four personality drive, the one that wants to be special, and then everybody starts copying it, and it can go across, all the drives.
Mhm.
But they're the ones that are at the forefront. They're wanting to be different and special.
Yeah. It makes me
Tattoos.
think of like almost like remember Lady Gaga, she wore that meat dress. And she's always like, or like for example, one of my favorite artists, Rico Nasty, like
Mm-hmm,
she they're not afraid of being different. Like she's more of an alternative rapper, and she doesn't, she's skinny, she looks like me, and she doesn't, she's not about getting implants or looking
mm-hmm,
fake or,
mm-hmm,
and yeah, like kind of like artists like that, or I would think of like fashion designers.
mm-hmm.
There's like all these like different looking designs. Like
Right.
there's one I saw, there's this uh a model, she was in a show, and it was like a balloon, and like when it pops it comes down and it forms like this latex dress almost. Yeah, it's like, whoa, like,
Who
who would
thinks
have
up
thought?
these things?
Yeah. Or I would think like maybe like, I don't know, like Stephen King or Edgar Allan Poe, like, they're kind of these, with the things that they
Yes.
write is very different. It kind of has like a ominous, like, huh, like how did you come up with that?
Right. Exactly.
Mm.
Another famous one who wants to be special, and number four is Vincent van Gogh,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? Because he wants to stand out. His pictures are very different from the time.
Mm-hmm.
And here's another thing about the fours is that what makes them unique and different a lot of times is their emotions. They play the extremes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm going to wrap my hair all over and call it, a new fashion, right? It's playing the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
But they also do that emotionally. So
Mm-hmm.
they can't just be sad. They have to be, I'm so depressed. They, the tragic romantic, the melodrama of my life. And they can't just be happy. They have to be manic. I am just
Yeah.
so exuberant and
Mhm.
because they want the distinction. The goal is, I want the attention on me, and how do I get it? I get it by going into these dark and terrible
Mhm.
moods so that all my friends will be hovering around me to make sure I'm all right.
Mhm.
You know, and so then there's Vincent van Gogh that comes along. He's obviously this personality drive. I'm so depressed. I'm going to chop off my ear and I'm going to draw a picture of it and I'm going to make it famous. Right?
Mhm.
It's like so classic
Yeah.
of this personality drive.
Mhm.
And of all the personality drives, this is the one I can spot.
Mhm. Yeah.
I can spot it coming down the street at me. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah. When I took the test, this was like my one right under the one that I got the most of. So this is like my
Hmm.
second place
Hmm. Hmm. And
drive.
you might lean on that one,
Mhm.
or on the one on the other side, but we can talk about that when we talk about your personality drive.
Mhm.
So to reverse this, um, ref, the one who wants to be special has to realize that, you know what, you're not special.
Mhm.
You might have a great talent, but that doesn't make you special.
Mhm.
Everyone wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be seen. Everyone wants to be recognized. Everyone wants to be appreciated. And that can be the most solitary person in the world. That doesn't change.
Mhm.
And guess what? Everybody has stresses, and you have to learn how to control your emotions. You have to learn how to put the brakes on your ups and downs.
Mhm.
That is something that you have to learn how to manage your stress.
Mhm.
You're not special.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just because you get so depressed doesn't mean you're special.
Mhm.
And that's the hardest thing in the world for this personality drive to do, because their survival strategy is based on being seen because you're unique and different.
Mhm.
And when they can step back and realize, all of this emotional stuff I'm doing, let's get real here. You
Mhm.
don't have to feel like it's the end of the world. This too shall pass. And so for them, it's all about learning how to take charge of their emotions, take charge of um, the extreme things that they do. Because a lot of these people get killed
Mhm.
as a result of this. I don't know if you've ever heard of Isadora Duncan. She was before your time, but she was this personality drive, and she was a very flamboyant dancer, and she was wearing this long scarf that, when she would be in a car, like a convertible, it would flow out behind her, and that was her form of distinction. What people find distinctive now was glamorous,
Mhm.
in the 40s and 50s.
Mhm.
And the scarf choked her.
Mm.
She
Oh,
was
wow.
in a car, and the scarf wrapped around something and choked her.
Wow.
So of all the personality drive, this was the one that can become the most bipolar
Mhm.
and have really, really dark times. And so it's all about learning how to take charge
Mhm.
of your energy, basically, and realize, you know what? It's perfectly okay to be ordinary.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with ordinary people.
Mm.
So the next personality drive is called the observer. It's also sometimes called the thinker.
Mhm.
Do you know any other names that it's called?
I think it wasn't the investigator.
The investigator, these type of things. So here's what happens to the observer personality drive is they look out into the world and realize it's a crazy place, and they see all this emotional stuff going around, and they have very sensitive emotions. All children do, but they are easily humiliated by things that people say. And so what they do is they separate themselves from their emotions and live entirely in the intellect.
Mm.
And their goal in life is to figure everything out.
Mm.
If I could just think it through, if I could just figure it out. And instead of participating in life, they begin to observe it.
Mhm.
why they're called observers. They think that um, dancing is a spectator sport. They don't engage in it. They think that sports are things that other people do. They watch it because they're the observers. They
Mm,
don't tend to engage in life. Now, there are very famous people who are thinkers and have they're inventors. They that's their goal in life, to figure things out and to think things through. But they do it without a lot of emotion and
mm,
without a lot of compassion. And because they're emotionally detached, they get into relationships with others and they are detached from that relationship emotionally.
mm,
They don't want to reveal themselves or be vulnerable emotionally. So they don't share any emotionally compelling information with their partner.
mm,
They're very good at wanting to hear all about their partner's troubles and all about their partner's childhood and all about their partner's trauma, but they don't want to reveal what their experiences are
mm,
because that makes them emotionally vulnerable. So they're always trying to protect themselves
mhm,
emotionally. So the dark side of this personality drive, unfortunately, and I will go to the darkest, is like doctors and scientists who worked in concentration camps during World War II, and they were the ones that did all that experimenting on people,
mm,
with total emotional detachment. They were told that these people were dirty and all the things that were said about the Jews, and it's like, okay, we'll just use them as our lab rats.
mm.
And I even think of scientists who experiment on animals. I could never do that
Yeah.
because I would feel every feeling.
Mm,
I'm empathic. I would feel those feelings. I couldn't do that. But when you're a thinker in this personality drive that is really disintegrated, really detached from your own emotions, you can do that kind of thing.
mhm,
I can go bomb a country. Doesn't matter if thousands and thousands of people are being murdered. I'm emotionally detached from that. And I'm called great because I invented that bomb. So Einstein obviously was a great thinker.
mhm,
And he did a lot of things for the world, including, the inventor. I mean, he wasn't the inventor of quantum physics, but he really moved that forward. So thinkers like solitude. They need time to themselves. They need they're great researchers, and they like to spend time figuring things out and researching. Many of them become scientists, and as scientists, they don't like to share what they find with others because in that field, there's a lot of competition. You want to get your work published, you want things to be named after you, you want to be known for something, so they tend to be closed off. They don't want other people to find out. Things are changing now, but for decades, that's the way it was.
mhm,
Um, they like working with numbers.
mhm,
There's not much emotion attached to numbers. Like I would be bored to tears working with
mhm,
numbers all day long. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to die now. you
mhm.
know.
That's
But
funny.
there are people who can be accountants. There are people who can work with numbers all day long, and
Mm,
they like it.
yeah. Yeah, and, like, for me, I that's the personality drive that I, got was number 5, the
hmm
investigator, and for me, I've always loved math, and I love it because it's emotional. Like, I love how, there's only one answer. Like, I hated
hmm
English. I love English because I could sound smart, but I hated how many different variations of words there are, and I hate how you can tell somebody's personality based on their writing.
Mhm.
I didn't like that. That's why I loved math because I'm like, you can't tell anything about me by my equation, you can't tell
Mhm.
anything about my personality by
So you're kind of closed off.
yeah. Yeah, that's how I was, and certain things you said, yes, most things, I think you said something in the beginning.
Being easily humiliated.
Yeah, like, me and also you said they're more they don't participate in life. I feel like I do, I mean, probably less than most people, but, I enjoy dancing, I enjoy, not getting up on stage, but I enjoy kinda like because 'cause I'm my second one is number 4, I do
Mhm.
like kind of to feel like I'm special and to feel like, "Oh, like, wow, she's" like, I like when all eyes are kinda on me because of something not because I'm doing something embarrassing or something dumb, but because, "Oh, wow, like, she's wearing" like, I love having long nails, "Look at her."
Mhm.
Or I
Right.
love when
Mhm.
people comment on my, 2-inch long nails or,
Mhm. Mhm.
so that is a little different from the number 5 personality,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
closed off. I like to be closed off, but emotionally. I am more closed off emotionally and,
More
even
reserved.
yeah, and even my mom, she's like, "Wow, you say things so harsh." Like, you can kinda take them. I'm really good at taking emotions out of things, which,
Mhm.
is kind of not a good thing. Um,
So sometimes it is.
yeah, it's a defense
Sometimes it's
mechanism.
needed.
Yeah, yeah, it depends on what you're separating yourself from, but,
Mhm.
like you said, in the dark aspect of it, it can be too much. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely more of that, and also I don't know if you're into MBTIs, I'm an INTJ, which
Mhm.
they're known for being more analytical,
Right.
they kinda reserved, they just think about things, so that
Mhm.
also matches with that too.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's yeah, you got it right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the 4
Mhm.
is overly emotional
Mhm. Yeah.
and the 5 is
It's not.
emotionally detached.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been both.
Mhm. Right. And you also have a lot of 6 in you.
Yes. 6 was my 3rd.
Yes. And it's interesting because that's one way to look for your personality drives. You find the 3 that you most relate to, and then you'll be the one in the middle.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
So 5 was my number 1, and then 4, 2, and then 6 was 3.
Mhm.
So and they're all, I mean, fairly I mean, for example, the 4 and the 5, I feel like are very different when it comes to, like, emotions and,
Mhm. Right.
um
But if you're a 5 that leans on a 4, you will be more emotional than if
mm,
you're a 5 that leans on a 6.
okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and my experience with my own personality drive is sometimes I'll lean on one and sometimes I'll lean on the other.
Mhm.
I'll go back and forth because you're going to have traits of all of them. So positive thinkers, they are the great inventors of the world. So when you think about people who have amazing breakthroughs and are thinking divergently and looking at a situation
Mm,
differently, um, it takes a certain kind of mindset
mm,
to do that.
yeah.
And they do make great investigators and medical researchers and all of these kinds of things. They go into quantum physics and their robotics and all of these kinds of things because they're a lot of them are extremely intelligent.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
that doesn't follow all the way through, but
Yeah. And same thing, I mean, that goes for, how I took that test a little bit ago for like my star seed type.
hmm
I
hmm
did an online test and then I did an actual like chart test, like somebody, I
hmm
guess, read it from my chart. And they said I was an Arcturian star seed. And those star seeds are very analytical. They love numbers, they love technology, and they like figuring things out. They're not really emotional.
hmm
So that all, I mean, that's all the same thing, kind of.
right,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
So another famous 5 is Sigmund Freud.
Mm,
So think about that. Sigmund Freud is called the father of psychology. And his form of doing therapy with people is lie here on this couch and I will sit behind you. We will have no eye contact
Mhm.
whatsoever.
Mhm.
And I'll just be taking notes
Mhm.
on what you say.
Yeah.
And he was a 5. I don't want to be emotionally involved
Mhm.
with you. I'm going to analyze you. And it was called analysis. You go to a therapist to be analyzed.
Yes. Yeah, and I've gotten that before too. I mean, I've had people tell me, "Why are you analyzing me?" And I'm like,
Mhm,
"Oh, well, I'm supposed to figure out how to what's the best way to communicate to you to get the best results." Like that's
mhm.
how I always saw people,
Right. Mhm.
I'm like, "Oh, everybody you talk to them differently because they have a different wiring in their brain."
Right.
Okay, let me
Exactly.
figure out how to make them more comfortable with me
Right.
and,
Right. You're a very high level 5.
mhm.
And yeah, you're going to behave differently depending on your maturity level. Did you see the movie A Beautiful Mind?
I don't think so.
He was this guy got some kind of Pulitzer Prize for some kind of mathematical formula that he created. I can't remember it. I watched the movie and read the book.
Mhm.
Um, but he had no concept of love whatsoever. He was also schizophrenic.
Mhm.
And this personality drive tends, I think, of all the other personality drives because they're out of touch with their emotions, can become schizophrenic or paranoid schizophrenic. They start hearing voices. This personality drive loves solitude. They
Mhm.
don't necessarily care about hanging out with people. Yeah, he was another classic 5. I've got down here Tim Burton and
Mhm.
Stephen King.
Yes.
You know who Tim Burton is? He's the one that did all those weird Halloween cartoons and
Yeah, and I
Christmas.
love those
Yeah.
cartoons. Yeah, they're like my favorite.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found them really strange myself.
Mhm. Yeah.
But divergent, very different thinking
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kinda
and
like how, uh
very creative. I bet he was a 5 leaning on a 4.
mhm, yeah. Yeah, even like I wanted to mention the writer of I don't know if you watch, there's a anime, it's a Japanese cartoon of it's called Attack on Titan, and
I haven't
it's
seen that one.
so I mean, just the whole plot of it, the whole storyline, it's so intricate and it's so developed and it's gory. It's about like these monsters that, would eat people, but, where did they come from? What is the storyline behind it? And there's these people that are living behind a wall and it's like what's behind the wall? Like it's just I
Mhm,
need to watch it, but
mhm,
it's kinda like that type of thinking, probably a 5 leaning on a 4, it's very
mhm.
different, and he's made a lot of different animes that are I mean, he made Death Note, which is about a guy that has a book from a demon that fell from the sky, and he writes a name down and they die, and he has to figure out how to do this under the radar, and he's like this criminal mastermind that, like,
Oh,
kills people by writing their name down,
Oh,
it's very gory and it's about death, but it's very
mhm.
interesting, and it's like, how do you come up with that stuff?
Right.
Like yeah.
Yeah, Edgar Allan Poe, he's another one. Well, actually, he's not in this personality drive. I think he was in the last one. But
Mhm.
he could have leaned on a 5.
Yeah, and I loved his or Agatha Christie, I know she was a
Oh,
5.
yeah.
I
Mhm.
loved her books, and I was, like, in 6th grade, and I thought that was my favorite book for
Right.
you
Right.
know
Detective books, they
Mhm.
really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, there's who done it. Let's figure it out.
Yeah, and I love how it's, like, kind of it has a horror sense to it, but it's not like it's, like, demonic, it's just the mastermind of a human, just, like,
Mhm.
what is your brain capable of
Mhm.
thinking that way, you know?
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah. So the next personality drive is a type 6, and Lazarus calls this a safety and security personality drive, and they're also called the loyalist and the questioner. Um, so the loyalist looks out into the world and goes, "Oh my God, it's a dangerous place out there.
Mhm.
There's dangers everywhere you look."
Mhm.
And what do I need to do to keep myself safe? So they say to themselves, I better create a strategy to deal with this.
Mhm.
Or else they just hide themselves in their house and never come out.
Mhm.
And so think of people who are sociophobic and never come out of their house. Those people are sixes.
Mhm.
So this personality drive reflects in two completely different ways. So one type of personality drive says, okay, there's danger. What do I need to do to confront this danger so that
Mhm.
I'm not afraid of it? Do I need to create a strategy? Do I need to build my muscles? Do I need to take Tai Chi or
Mhm.
karate, or what do I need to do? Right? Um, okay. In order to make a living, I'd better go to college or get this training, or they're they're thinking that way because why? Poverty isn't very safe.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
they're thinking, what do I need to do to create safety and security in my life? And they go after that. They confront it. They do what they feel like they need to do.
Mhm.
Um, and the other way to do it is to just not confront it at all and literally just stay in your house
Mhm.
and be so fear based that you never go out, you never do anything, you don't go on any adventures because you're afraid that, oh my God, I'll get lost or this, that, and the other. Or I might meet somebody who might could do me wrong, or all these kinds of thoughts
Mhm.
going through their heads. And this personality drive has a very vivid imagination. And unfortunately,
Mhm.
they're imagining all
Mhm.
the things that can
That could
go
go wrong.
wrong,
Yeah.
and they're having to overcome their fears. They are people who are very loyal to their families, and they not only want to create safety and security for themselves, they want to create safety and security for everyone,
Mhm.
for their children, for their partner, for the people they love and care about. They're the ones who are going to their friends and saying, you shouldn't be eating all that sugar. It's bad for you.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
This is my personality drive, so I can laugh about it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And wanting to keep my children safe, they have a very difficult time with strangeness, things that they don't understand or don't know how to deal with.
Mhm.
And so when people come along who are outside the norm, doing strange and bizarre things,
Mhm.
they're automatically suspect.
Mhm.
So, according to my teacher Lazarus, Germany was full of this personality drive during World War II, and
Mhm.
that Hitler himself was this personality drive, that drive number 6. And so he was looking out into the world and going, those Jews, they're the cause of all the financial problems.
Mhm.
They're dirty, they carry disease. Those crippled people, they're the ones that are causing our government to collapse because they're so needy and they can't do anything for the economy. Those people,
Mhm.
they're the problem.
Mhm.
And today, looking at what's going on in the world today, and they can get caught up in conspiracy theory and the cabal, and looking at all the things going on with the pharmaceutical organizations. They look at all that stuff. They're attracted to
Mhm.
paying attention to those kind of things, because those things are dangerous and they are happening.
Mhm.
They don't back away from it. They don't pretend like it's not happening. They pay attention.
Mhm.
And when I was looking up, I use a lot of different websites to compile all this information and get like jobs they go to and famous people. But one of the most famous people that I came across was Erin Brockovich, who's this personality drive. You know who she is?
Mhm.
There's a movie called Erin Brockovich several years ago, and it was related to a scandal having to do with PG&E releasing all these chemicals
Mhm.
into the water of people living in this certain town in somewhere in California, I believe. And she was the sole person behind figuring this out. And all the people in this town, the children, they're all getting cancer and dying and terrible things happening to them. And she did all this research. She's this personality drive. I lean on a 5.
Mhm.
So research is not something I'm afraid to do.
Mhm.
Looking at, well, what's really going on and where are the complaints happening, and looking into the files related to PG&E. And she was the one that discovered that. But sixes are very cautious. We've got a lot of anxiety all the time. Because why? Because we're looking at all these things that
Yeah.
are dangerous and imagining the
Mhm.
terrible consequences that can come out of these things. I mean, and it's the personality drive is unconscious. You're just doing it without not even knowing that you're doing it.
Mhm.
Just like you're the way you are without even knowing, oh, I'm emotionally detached.
Mhm.
You're not thinking about, why am I different than everyone else? It's like everybody else doing all this weird emotional stuff. Why don't they
Mhm.
stop it? Right?
Yeah. I'm like, just think logically and then maybe you'll feel better.
Exactly.
Like maybe you'll make better
Exactly.
decisions if you just, like I like to think about it like a video game, you don't get emotionally attached to your video game character,
Right.
and you
Right.
probably make better decisions even though you're not scared of death in a game, but.
Exactly, but you're the only personality drive that does that.
Yeah. Yeah, and to me, I'm like, okay, like, maybe everybody else is just, and then and I'm very also I can be like that too, or I think when I was younger, it was more of like, oh, I was kinda looking at, kinda like the dangers in life, like a 6, and,
Mhm, mhm,
um, you kinda think, "Oh, like, that's scary," especially we were talking about earlier, like, this is a world we live in a world that is full of danger.
mhm.
Not even that's not even based on our personality drive, that's just a
Right,
fact,
it's just like walking across the street, you can be dangerous.
Yeah, you could get shot if you're walking in the street and
Or in the wrong neighborhood,
yeah,
or yeah,
yeah,
a meteor could land on you just out of the blue,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, you could get struck by lightning and,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly, and when that's your focus of attention, I mean, it takes up a lot of your headspace.
yeah,
Um,
draws that stuff to you almost.
mhm.
Mhm,
So anyway, back to this Erin Brockovich thing and her being a 6, she started out really, really cautious, really scared, doubting herself all the time. It's like, why am I the only one seeing this? I must be making it up. I don't have what it takes to do this, all the dark laws coming into place, and all of a sudden she's through her research, she's discovering these things, and then she starts interviewing the people who live in this town, and the cancers they've had and all of this stuff, and her heart gets really involved, and this personality drive is a loyalist.
mhm,
It means their heart goes out to people who are in danger.
mhm,
And so she gets it together to create this whole investigation, and and get PG&E to pay these people
mhm,
millions of dollars for the damage they've caused to their health.
yeah,
And that's a true story,
mhm,
but it took her tremendous courage to go up against Goliath,
mhm,
basically.
yeah,
And so that's the dark and that's the light of this personality drive. So I can talk about this personality drive from my own experience of being very, very fear-based from childhood, being afraid to go anywhere by myself because I was always getting lost. And those of you who've lived your whole life GPS have no idea
yeah,
what it's like to be out in the middle of nowhere and not know how to get home.
mhm,
Um, and was also sheltered as a child, so I wasn't confronted with much. So that by the time I became an adult, I was very, very fear-based. I moved where I'm at now because where I grew up was Los Angeles, and it was like, oh my God, I can't go on those freeways. They're just going off in every direction, and
yeah,
people are driving 80 miles an hour, and I mean, I was in anxiety all the time. So
mhm,
I moved to a place where there was only 6 stoplights.
Mhm. Yeah.
That was 45 years ago, and there's more now, but, it was like, "Oh, I don't have to be in anxiety all the
Mhm.
time." So, for me, without a spirituality, I had no way of creating an idea of safety and security
Mhm.
because there's so many things in the world that are beyond my control. I can't possibly create a strategy to deal with all of them, right?
Yeah.
And so it was when I developed my relationship with higher power, with God, with my higher consciousness, with this concept of love, and began to my journey into understanding reality creation and higher and conscious evolution, and began understanding this thing called vibration and
Mhm.
creating this relationship with divine love. And the Course in Miracles was a huge help to me in this because the Course in Miracles is all about God loves you, you're safe.
Mhm.
If you're returning that love, but it's a two-way street, right? So God can love you, but if you don't even know that God exists and don't care about God and never talk to God, well, that's a one-way street.
Yeah.
And there's no vibration for you in that. But when you are turning to God and you are loving God in return and you are talking to God and you are having this conversation as you evolve your character and face your shadow and develop yourself so that you can meet your full potential, then you have courage
Mhm.
to do what's right, to go after what you want, even though it's scary, to believe that I'm safe, even though I live in this really scary world.
Mhm.
And for me, 90% of my spiritual journey, because I was doing things like quitting my job and stepping into the unknown and living on faith and figuring out how to trust, because this is what the Course in Miracles, it wasn't what the Course in Miracles told me to do, but it told me that once I was vibrating in this higher place, I would be safe. Well, I wanted to know if that was true.
Mhm.
And so I did these things based on faith and based on courage. And I went to bed every night saying 10,000 affirmations.
Mhm.
I am safe. I am loved. I am cared for.
Mhm.
Light and joy and peace abide in me. Saying all these things because I had a lot of reprogramming to do
Mhm.
in my brain. And that's how I've gotten to where I am, by reprogramming my brain, by saying those affirmations, by understanding my personality drive and choosing to lift it into a higher vibration. So the 7 personality drive is, most of the books call them the adventurer or the epicure. Lazarus calls them the one who wants to have fun.
Mhm.
So this is the personality drive that looks at the world and goes, oh my God, there's a lot of bad things out there. I'm just going to screen those out of my awareness. And I'm just going to focus my attention on everything that's fun and interesting for me to do
Mhm.
and ignore all the rest. And that sounds like a great personality drive, except that
Mhm.
a lot of times what they're ignoring is cleaning up after themselves.
Mhm.
What they're ignoring is things they're not interested in, like, well, you know what, this relationship was fun for a while. We got to have all that sex and it felt really good. And now it's like, we're having problems.
Mhm.
I don't want to deal with that.
Mhm.
Let's just forget that. I
Mhm.
think I'll leave this relationship and go to the next one that's fun and interesting,
Mhm.
for a while
Yeah.
until it gets like, I don't want to deal with that anymore.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's toxic. No one wants to be with somebody who's like that.
well, and they have real big problems with commitment. They don't want to be fenced in any way. They
Mhm.
want to be set free to do the fun things that they want to do.
Mhm.
And I had an ex-partner that was this personality drive, so all this fear-based personality drive, and this is the have fun personality drive, and he was a creative genius. I mean, he was an inventor. He could figure things out, but did he ever put anything away?
Mhm.
It was like, let's not just have one set of tools, let's have 50, because you know what? I haven't put anything away for 5 years, so I can't find anything. So let's
Mm.
just go buy another one. That's more fun than looking.
Oh my God. That's like
And
completely opposite, I would think, than from what, the six is.
well, it was.
Yeah.
But when you get together with someone, you know nothing about personality
Yeah.
drive, right? You're in sexual heaven, and things
Mm.
are going great for a while until they don't go great anymore. And
Mm.
then you start having conflict and stress, and you both begin to disintegrate. And well, we lived out in the country, so it's like we can't get rid of anything. It's like we have to have 5 dead cars in the yard because we might need the parts.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh wow.
he was majorly challenging for me to live with.
Mm.
Um, and the other example that I like to use, I really love this example, is Mrs. Doubtfire.
Mm.
Remember the movie Mrs. Doubtfire?
Mhm.
It was
Yeah.
very, 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 very popular. Robin Williams was in the movie, and it was about him and his wife. And he was have fun personality drive, and she was a lawyer, and I'm pretty sure she was a reformer
Mm.
in the movie. And the reformer is all about reform, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
We do things according to the rules and the books, and we don't break the law, and we follow,
Mm.
all these things, and we catch the bad guys and we put them in jail. And the movie starts out is that he's giving his young son a party, and it's a nice home. And I don't remember how old his son was, maybe 12, 10, 12 years old. And the wife is still at work, and the whole house is like a disaster,
Mm.
just a total and utter chaos. She comes home, she walks, she's got her 2 arms with the groceries,
Mhm.
right? She can barely open the door. She climbs up onto to the porch, and she notices, the first thing she notices, well, the pots of the potted plants on the porch are broken.
Mm.
And she walks into the house, and her husband, Robin Williams, is dancing on the table.
Mm.
And there's all this chaos around. And she looks at him, and he looks at her and says, "What's the matter, dear?"
Ah.
Because what sevens do is they screen out everything they don't want to think about or look at or do. It was like for him, there was no chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just fun.
Yeah, it was just fun. We just had the most fun party.
Mhm.
And if you remember the movie, she wants a divorce,
Mhm.
and he doesn't have a job, and he goes to an employment agency, and he's having this interview with the person, and she says, "Well, what was your last job?" And he says, "Well, my last job was working at a TV show or something." And she said, "Well, what did you do there?" And she says, "Well, I made funny voices and funny faces."
Mm.
Like, that's not too employable.
Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, his idea of a job was having fun.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so the wife is a lawyer, of course, and she makes it so that he can't see his kids until, I mean, she knows if he's living alone, he's not going to clean up his house. It's going to be
Mhm.
total and
Yeah, it's
utter
gonna be a
chaos.
disaster.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So she says, "You can't see your kids until you clean up your act, until you got a job," all these things that
Mhm.
sevens don't want to hear about.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I could go on with the example, but I think you get the idea.
Yeah.
Some people call this personality drive the Peter Pan syndrome,
Mm.
the "I prefer not to grow up" syndrome. A lot of times they won't grow up until there's someone like in Mrs. Doubtfire that's saying, "You can't see your kids living like this. You can't see you can't do X, Y, and Z. You got to show me that you're responsible."
Mhm.
And of all the personality drives, these are the party animals. They want to be having fun. They want to be getting drunk. They want to be, you know,
Mhm.
getting high, because why? It's fun. Why
Mhm.
wouldn't I want to do that? They do have a good side. A lot of these people, I think of JP Sears. Do you know who he is?
Mm-mm.
He's a comedian who is looking at the current problems in our society, and he does these little 10-minute skits that are hilarious, but
Mm.
they're informing people
Mm.
about the absurdity of what's going on right now in the world.
Mhm.
And there's other people who've done that, and I can't remember their names, but they use humor to teach people. Some of these, this personality drive will go into the ministry to
Mhm.
help lift people up. People who, comedians who make fun of other people to get humor by putting other people down, those are disintegrated sevens. But but comedians who lift people up with
Mhm.
their humor, these are integrated sevens. They
Mm.
also tend to be very charming, very charismatic people. And when they're in the positive polarity of their drive, of course, they're using humor in a positive way to have fun with everybody.
Mhm.
That's the seven. So the eight is the boss, sometimes called the leader and sometimes called the tyrant. So the
Mm.
boss looks out in the world and goes, wow, weak people.
Mhm.
They get trampled on, and I don't want to be one of those.
Mm.
So I am going to cultivate my ability to be strong and powerful and stand up and lord it over
Mhm.
the people who might take advantage of me. And so that's exactly what they do. And their survival strategy is I never want to be taken advantage of. I want to be top dog. I want to tell other people what to do. And my word is law.
Mm.
And so, of all the personality drives, I, for one, think this one is the most challenging because a
Mhm.
lot of times they're not reasonable.
Mhm.
It's my way or the highway. There's no discussion here. We're just going to do it the way I want it to go. That's
Mhm.
just the way it's going to be. In their disintegrated form, they are the classic bullies. The only personality drive that bullies other people are this personality drive. And they do that to intimidate other people to make themselves feel stronger and better. You know anyone like that?
I would think of like maybe government officials or
People, people in the military.
yes. Yeah. I mean
Yeah.
even cops could kind of be like that, you know.
Yep. 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 Cops, especially if they're really bad cops, the ones that are
Mhm.
beating people up and things like that. Um, Generals, but anyone who wants to rise to a position of power. You know, it
Mhm.
takes a lot to rise to a position of power, to be the top dog. You know, they could be achievers, but they could also be the boss. It's like, I'm not going to let anybody else tell me what to do. I
Mhm.
want to run this show. They do become entrepreneurs and they do, you know, they have employees and it's, you know, they micromanage and it's the way it's going to go.
Mhm.
It's the way I tell you it's going to go. And they can be teachers, they can go into any kind of profession, but a lot of times they're the boss.
Mhm. Yeah, and I don't think anyone would want to work for that type of personality.
Yeah, nobody does. They're
Yeah.
very difficult to work with.
Mhm.
But the boss can also, once they have moved into the positive polarity, they're also the protector.
Mhm.
They're the ones that can protect the underdog. They, you know, they can be that person that realizes that somebody is being picked on by a bully, and they will be, you know, if you're also that personality type, you'll stand up and say, "You're not doing that to my buddy."
Yeah.
So they have that aspect too. They're great protectors of their families,
Mhm.
and they thrive on conflict.
Mhm.
I I step back from conflict. I just, you know, sometimes if I see that a conversation is going to go nowhere, I
Mhm.
step back and I don't want to deal with it.
Mhm.
But this personality drive thrives on conflict. And so they like that kind of thing. So they're very competitive. They like going into occupations where they have to compete
Mhm.
with other businesses and other people and so forth. They also make great leaders. So, for example, when you're a good leader, you look at your employees and you say, wow, this person is really good at that, and that person is good as that, and that person is good as that. How can I give out jobs to people that are best qualified for this
Mhm.
and help them rise to the top,
Mhm.
right? And so, even though in the immature polarity, they're very difficult, in the mature polarity, well, they can be the kings or queens that you want to have leading a country, that are doing it to protect the people, are doing it for good reasons instead of because I want to take advantage of somebody else's resources. So you think about generals, you think about in the movie Patton, people who aren't afraid of conflict, aren't afraid. I once knew this guy, he was retired from the military, and he was talking about brawling, and he said, well, I like to brawl as much as anybody else. It
Mhm.
was like, I've never heard that before from
Mhm.
anybody.
I'm like, I
You
don't like to
like
be
to do
bald.
that. Yeah, you
Yeah.
like to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're not afraid of conflict. So when you're in that kind of situation where conflict's going to erupt, you want somebody that's not afraid of that. So the last personality drive is called the peacemaker.
Mhm.
And the peacemaker is the classic metaphor or symbol of the Buddha.
Mhm.
They want to be able to sit under the Bodhi tree, and even if bombs are dropping all around them, they want to be in peace.
Mhm.
I don't want anything to bother me outside of me. I don't want to deal with conflict. I don't want to deal with anything that is going to disturb my peace of mind.
Mhm.
And in the positive polarity, these are really nice people. They're not judgmental. Nothing ever bothers them. Get along with everybody. But in the negative polarity, they're not able to address the things that need to be addressed. I
Mhm.
once had a client who was a peacemaker, and he was this huge, he was probably 100 pounds overweight, and um, really nice guy. It was during the days when I was being a care provider, and I would come in and I would take him to the market and do some house cleaning and so forth for him. A really nice guy to work for, really sweet personality. And then he had these people move in with him to share that rent. And oh
Mhm.
my goodness, these people walked all over him. The house was completely trashed. This was in the days before cell phones, and they'd get on the phone and make hundreds of dollars worth of long distance calls and not pay for them. And I was coming unglued over this, and I was
Mhm.
talking to him, and why are you allowing this? But here's what peacemakers do. They create a story that
Mhm.
just allows everything to be all right.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
talk themselves out of dealing with conflict. They talk themselves out of thinking that there's going to be they're on the road to disaster. They just stay at peace. It's like that Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree with bombs dropping all around him. It's like, oh, everything's in the mind.
Mhm.
I can create peace and tranquility.
Mhm.
And they're kind of classic couch potatoes. They have a hard time getting going on any setting goals and
Mhm.
going towards goals. And because why? Well, that's disturbing. I have
Mhm.
to get up and maybe confront things and do things I don't necessarily want to do. And
Mhm.
so they just stay in a state of inner peace. Yeah, and they can stay there until their life is falling down around their ears.
Mhm.
But in the positive polarity, they're the peacemaker that we need. They're the mediators. They're the ones that can help people resolve their conflicts and come to a state of peaceful interaction in their relationship. And peacemakers are very sorely needed in our world, but they
Mhm.
have to be in the positive polarities. Anyway, that's the 9 personality drives. I have given you just a very, very small analysis of these drives. The drives are complex. Like I said, there's dozens of books you can buy. There's dozens of websites that you can go to that will give you more information if you are still not understanding what your personality drive is. There are tests you can take. And I do want to say that understanding my personality drive was the single most important aspect of my spiritual journey,
Mm,
because it allowed me to stand back and see a part of me that had been invisible before. And when your personality drive is invisible to you, it is the driver on the road to your life. It's sitting in the car at the driver's seat, driving you down the road of your life,
mm,
making decisions, not consciously, but unconsciously, because if your personality drive isn't conscious to you, you're making conscious, you're making decisions based upon your unconsciousness,
mm,
and you over here, sitting in the passenger seat, are just letting it all happen.
mhm,
And until you kick the personality drive out of the driver's seat and say, okay, I'm the one that's going to make decisions based upon my ability to see a higher perspective, be in higher consciousness, um, your personality drive can destroy your life.
yeah, no, it is really important. I think it's a good way to kinda self-reflect
Hmm.
and, see, like, because I mean, for example, if you tell, like, a personality 4 that they're not special, they're gonna be like, "What do you mean? Of course I'm special." You know?
Hmm.
Like me, like, telling me that being emotionally detached is can be bad. Me, I'm kinda like at first, I'm like, "How is that?" Like, I think that's great, you know? Like, that's how
Hmm.
I protect that if I wasn't, then I would be too emotional, or I would be like a number 4 where I'm, like, hot and cold and, you
Well,
know
but it gives you trouble in your relationships.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, because then, I'm thinking
You're not emotionally attached to anybody.
yeah, yeah, and then it causes problems, but then me, I'm like, "Well, maybe being alone is is better."
It's better.
Yeah, like, so then I
Exactly.
don't have to deal with emotional problems, but in the long run, would probably get lonely and,
Yep,
know
that's exactly what happens to fives.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and everything just has to be kept in balance. Everything's a balancing act. It's every personality drive is great, and every personality drive is terrible.
Mhm, yeah,
You're the one that determines whether you're disintegrated or integrated. And Lazarus says, if you're not integrated, you're disintegrating.
mhm. Yeah, you're either one or the other.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And if you don't know you've got the personality drive in the first place, how can you assess that?
Mm, yeah, yeah.
The other thing that's great about the Enneagram is that it's a map. When I talked about those arrows,
Mhm,
when you're disintegrating into the bad part of another personality drive. And
mhm,
when you go on the other way, when you're integrating, you're going into the good part of another personality drive. So
mm,
it's a map. It can tell you, oh, I'm disintegrating right now. How do I need to look at this so that I can get into a more positive state of mind?
mhm.
I mean, it's an amazing tool.
Yeah, yeah.
Plus, it just helps you understand the world. It helps you understand why you're having all these conflicts with people.
Yeah, and it helps you understand other people's point of view and
Hmm.
how they feel and how they see
Exactly.
things.
Exactly. So, anyway,
Yeah.
that's it for today.
All right. And then what are we going to be discussing about next week?
I believe we're going to be talking about the shadow. This is where all on the part of related to the soul. I went through the seven faces of the soul, and now we're going to really dial in and find out whole lot more. Mm.
Okay. Sounds
Uh,
good.
The shadow can be a kind of a challenging class, but
Yeah. No,
very important.
yeah, I've been wanting to dive into, learning about the shadow and shadow work and everything like that. So I'm excited.
And how to do it.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you for watching.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Mm.